Hello, I'm Scarf Goggles and this is Lenny. Welcome to the VinMotive.com YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about the 5 longest running but now gone US automakers. What is it about a defunct car manufacturer that holds so much intrigue for the average gearhead? Is it dreaming about what might have been had they made it, or is it just about reminiscing? Whatever the reason might actually be, there is no denying that gearheads love talking about failed automakers. Let's take a look at some of the longest lived but now gone automakers in the US. These manufacturers stuck it out for decades, over a century in one case, but couldn't avoid the end of the road. Number 5. Mercury, 1939 to 2010. 71 years. Mention the name Merc to an American and you'll likely conjure up visions in him of a car named after a Roman god, instead of the German automaker. Ford Motor Company introduced the Mercury as a bridge between the cheaper Ford and the expensive Lincoln lines. For much of its early history, Mercury was allowed to build cars with their own designs. They were popular early on, but by the 1960s Lincoln surpassed Mercury in design. And by the 1970s Mercurys became nothing more than Fords with fake plastic wood trim. The Great Recession would be the end of Mercury. A single bright spot remains in the fact that Ford still has the Mercury name trademarked until 2025. Number 4. Plymouth, 1928 to 2001. 73 years. In 1928 Chrysler dreamed up the Plymouth brand in an effort to compete with Chevrolet in the low-priced segment. Plymouth did well for the majority of its 7 decades of production. In the 1980s Plymouth was able to produce a version of the Dodge minivan called the Voyager. The last gasp for Plymouth came with the development of the much-maligned PT Cruiser in the late 1990s. PTs would be introduced wearing the Chrysler name in 2001. The Plymouth brand was phased out by then. Number 3. International Harvester, 1907 to 1980. 73 years. Beginning in 1907, IH focused their automobile production on farm and heavy-use vehicles. Known for their dependability and reliability, they enjoyed a successful production run. The problems with IH began in the late 1970s and centered around labor. A new CEO was hired in 1979 and he took a knife to the budget. When it was learned that the CEO had taken $1 million bonus, a labor strike took place the next day. The vehicle production arm of IH never recovered from the turmoil, and the last production year was in 1980. Number 2. Pontiac, 1926 to 2010. 84 years. Pontiac was created by General Motors in 1926 to be a less expensive offering to the Oakland brand. Sales of the Pontiac would soon eclipse the more expensive Oakland. For over 8 decades Pontiac was a bit of a loose cannon at General Motors. In 1964 Pontiac would offer the Grand Tempest option or the GTO on their mid-sized 2-door car. This is widely regarded as the first shot in the muscle car wars of the 1960s. The move angered the front office at General Motors, at least until the sales figures started to come in, and then all was forgiven. By the early 2000s Pontiac had suffered the indignity of becoming just another boring car in the US automotive scene. Their last-ditch efforts to increase sales were all long shots, but Pontiac had battled back before to come out on top. But that wouldn't be the case by 2010. The General Motors federal bailout meant they would have to trim off the excess. In 2010 the last Pontiac, a fleet model G6 sedan, unceremoniously rolled off of the assembly line. And Pontiac Motor Division became a legend. And now the longest running but gone automaker in US history. Oldsmobile. 1897 to 2004. For 107 years the lonely Oldsmobile cruised the streets of America. Never over the top in its styling but always a little bit nicer than the Chevrolets. During its time Olds produced a little over 35 million cars, of which 14 million were produced in the same Lansing, Michigan factory. Unlike Pontiac, Oldsmobile went out in style. The final 500 cars that rolled off of the assembly line were all painted dark cherry metallic and received final 500 emblems. The final car, an all-aero GLS 4-door sedan, was signed by all of the Oldsmobile production workers, thus ending the story of the fourth longest-running automaker in the world. So there you have a quick look at the 5 longest-running automakers in the US. Have a great day and please like and subscribe for everything early automotive. And remember, the future of the past lives at vinmotive.com.